But there is a break before your presentation if you want to test anything out.
Everybody be leaving in this.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Everybody's like, I can't wait for Andy's. We were talking about it the way. You're the smartest person, that's why.
I know, sound, visual. Do I look okay? Is my hair good? Today? I didn't have a blow dryer this morning, so I had to kind of like towel it up. Oh, great.
Amazing girl. Yeah. Blow dryer, my hair is like literally straight. It just, yeah. It's horrible.
All right.
Okay, so welcome everyone. I'm behind the camera. You can't see me, but I will say hello. Hi. So we're trying to do the hybrid thing. So this is the first time I've done this. So hopefully it all goes well. But everybody pitched in with their gear and their know-how. So this is great. This is how I do my work. I just get everyone else to do my work. So far it works great. Welcome to the first off-topic writing conference. And we have some books at the back of the room. Andy very generously donated a bunch of books by Will Ferguson, so those ones are free to take. And then we have some off-topic books there as well if you want to buy any, and we have some of our postcards that we send out with our poetry box. Those ones, if you buy a book, you can take a postcard. If you just want to get a postcard, it's $1. You can pay by cash or e-transfer, whatever, we'll figure it out. For those of you who are not here, unfortunately, we don't have books for you, but you can buy ebooks on the website if you like. And yeah, so that's it. Thank you, Fen. We'll get started.
All right, if you can share my slides, I'm like staring at them. Marion is the voice of God right now. But then I don't have to look at myself on the camera. All right. Perfect. Okay, so for the people who are not with us physically, you might see the side of my head a lot because I am talking to the people who are here physically. I have a camera microphone, but I don't think it goes to the speakers. So can everyone hear me? All right. Okay, you're good. This is out. Okay. So today we are going to talk about flash fiction. This is a writing workshop. So I hope that you brought some pen and paper. If not, I do have a kitty cat notebook in my purse. If somebody requires, I have a few pages from that. And I have extra pens, of course, because I have 30,000 old. Jennifer had so good. So good. Today we are going to be talking about flash fiction, and Mary, my lovely assistant, if you go to the next slide. So, why do I feel qualified to talk about flash fiction? I don't know. I mean, any of the rest of you could probably come up here and do just as great a job at this as I can. I am a flash fiction aficionado. I started writing flash fiction during the pandemic, and so a lot of the writers I know came their way in certain writing styles during the pandemic. I found flash fiction because I had a complete mental breakdown and I was in grad school and I could not work on my novel and grad school and pandemic at the same time. And so I just stopped writing, and that made me feel worse. And then someone introduced me to the concept of flash fiction, and I found you can jot off a story in like 20 minutes and send it off, and people praise it, and then wow, like instant gratification. It was like my depression that's just like kicking in like a little piece of paper. So it was wonderful. So I feel since then I have won or placed with the Banff Flash Fiction and Blank Spaces magazine, and Hulk Lit has graciously accepted my work. And I just found that flash fiction has become a passion of mine. I've published one flash fiction collection. I have another one forthcoming through Off Topic Publishing soon. And I also just wrote a Star Trek flash fiction collection. So that one is going to be good. So that's why I feel somewhat qualified to talk about it. Is it because I'm moving that the sound's cutting in and out?
Probably, yeah.
All right, I will try not to move so much. I know. I'll stand. How's that? Is that better? Flash fiction is essentially any story under depending on who you ask, if it's me, it's under 1,000 words. Some publishers go a little rogue and say under 1,500, but no, I'm not going to accept that. If I'm doing flash fiction, it's 1,000 or under, because by the time you start getting into 1,500, that's kind of a short story. 1,000 and under, but it's not just the word count, it's also a whole package. And so we're going to talk a lot about how to make a full package of flash during this section. And why I think flash is important, whether you're a poet or a novelist or writing a memoir or anything like that, is that flash teaches you how to compress the things that you need to compress into the most important aspects of your story. So you're learning, as you write flash, how to make your character stand out on the stage, how to make your setting spring out in 5 words. How do you introduce a story? And in a sentence, your reader is with you in the setting. So we're going to learn about all of that in talking about the structure of flash. So I want to talk a little bit about generative writing. This is a generative writing course, and there's some important things that you should know about generative writing. One is that I sometimes go into a generative writing workshop and they say go, and boom, my brain turns on and I come out with an incredibly wonderful story, and it's like the best story I ever wrote, and I feel like I'm the best writer in the world. And sometimes, oftentimes, I go into a generative workshop and they say go, and I go duh, 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 and nothing comes out. That happens. It doesn't mean you're a bad writer. If you write something and you feel like it's just wooden or it's not flowing, and Sue Ann writes something that's absolutely stunning, don't compare yourself to what other people are doing in this. Just be grateful that you showed up. You brush your teeth every day and you don't necessarily see the results, but you're doing something good for yourself. Every time you write, whether something great comes out or not, you're doing brain hygiene. So that's what this class is today. We're going to be flash fiction, brain hygiene. Next slide, please. All right, so this is what we're going to talk about today. I know we have a lot of sessions that are going to be more of like a lecture style later. So I'm just going to make you do a ton of writing so you get all juiced and get your writing in for the morning. I'm going to tell you a little bit about some important aspects of flash that can help make it easier to write. And then we will do a little bit of brainstorming, so that when you do go into the generative writing part of the structure, you're going to have some ideas to carry with you that will hopefully kind of like grease the brain a little bit more. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about structure, and then we're all going to write a flash fiction piece line by line. So I'm going to give you some timed writing. It might seem like too much time, or it might seem like, why did Finn only give me 3 minutes to write this section? But hopefully you'll all come out of it with at least a first draft of a story. Next slide, please. All right, so these are a few of what I consider the most important things you need to know about flash. And the slides are gone. That's okay. It's just me staring up into the heavens again. Oh, look, it's like a nice screenshot of me. All right, there. All right, we're screenshotting. Okay. And in case anyone's wondering why there's monsters on all of my slides, it's because I was doing a shared presentation with someone once, and we put different monsters on our slides to like tell whose slide was going to be which, and then I just liked the monster so much that now I just use them in every presentation I do. So in Flash, one of the first things that you'll hear about when you start talking about Flash is this concept called media res, which basically means like in the middle of things. So if you're a novelist, you might start with your character who thinks they hear a sound in the house, and then they pull on their robe and they tiptoe over to the banister, and then they're like, well, maybe it was just the cat. And then they think about how horrible it would be if there was somebody in their house, and then maybe they go further down the stairs and then they realize that there's somebody staring at them. In flash fiction, there's somebody in the house. We start right there. We don't want all that build up, like start right in the middle of the action. A lot of times, and I know this happens to myself, I write a flash piece and I give it to one of my beta readers. And he said, you know, you could eliminate the first 3 sentences here and this would still be a really great story. And he's absolutely right when he says that. So think about that. Don't be afraid to write into your beginning, you know, write 4 or 5 sentences and then you're in the meat of it. And then when we go into revision at the end, you can think about, do I really need those 3 or 4 sentences in the beginning? Try to limit the number of characters you use because this is a short piece. And if you're trying to introduce 4, 5, 6 characters, it's going to get really convoluted. I try to do flashes that are all either only 1 character or 2 characters. As you'll see in the example here, there is a 3rd character, but it's just kind of a waiter that we'll do in this class later. And think about letting your title do the work. If you have a flash fiction that's titled Midnight on a Train Platform in Vienna, you set the setting already, and now you have a bunch of words for the rest of your story. I read a flash fiction once called The Wizard's Book Tastes of Flight. And I thought, isn't that the best title? Because you already know it's going to be speculative, because there's a wizard. And then you already have this like bit of conflict, right? Who's eating the wizard's book? It turned out it was his magic bird was eating the wizard's magic book. So think about, don't just title your story, you know, like The Train. Try to think of ways to bring the reader into your story. I read a poem that I think maybe either Andy or Marion sent to our group chat once, and it was all about this guy thinking about how the children in his classroom were just like, he basically just wanted to strangle them. And then you go back and reread, and the title was called The Hangover. And it made so much more sense. Like, yeah, so let your title carry your reader. I think it's one of the best ways you can really make a story stand out. There's a story called What If Everyone Was a Superhero? And then it ends up being about how commonplace it would be for people to be saved from being tied to the train tech. And then it kind of evolves into, and then the doctor would come into your hospital room, and instead of having tests and scans, he would flare into your body and kill the cancer cells. And so it ended up being really poignant, but it started with that what if question. So that's another great way to get it. Nail your first line. That is probably the best thing you can do with flash fiction. I know in novel writing, people say your first line is really important. I disagree. I don't disagree. It should be good. But sometimes your first line is just going to set up your book, right? And sometimes it should be your first paragraph, your first 2 or 3 paragraphs. And you can't necessarily have a brilliant first line if your first line is going to be, you know, like we were standing on a train station. How's that brilliant? Okay, we set the scene, but you know, like it's where you carry it. And in flash fiction, think about what your first line does. And we're going to get a little bit more into that a little bit later in this session. And this one is kind of controversial. Take it all the way home. And what I mean by that is you should have an ending. It doesn't necessarily have to be what we think of as an ending. I know that I have some places that I used to submit my work to that did not like the fact I don't tend to wrap up my stories. I just try to give them something final so the reader knows it's ended. So even if you don't necessarily tie everything up, you still have to let your reader know that it's done. And I'll show you an example of that when we get into the structure here. And last is just like understand it's a full story. So it might not have like the rising action and the climax and the falling action and the tiny ending. It might not have the denouement that we're used to in a novel, but it will have an arc. And so when you're writing your flash fiction, just kind of understand, and I'm sorry, I keep moving away from there because I'm drawn to the room here. Just understand that it should be a full arc and you should have a beginning, a middle, and an end in some way. So is that all cool? Like, are we all good now for now? All right. Also, like, please understand that one of my favorite things to tell my students is that if you can do it, you can do it. And what I mean by that is that whatever rules I give you, whatever structure you learn from me, you don't have to use it. If you can pull something off, pull it off. Because I would love it if people show me things that are outside of what I said was the way you should do it. If I still enjoy the story, absolutely. I never grade my creative writing students on structure or the way our grammar or dialogue formatting, because you know what, just like go to it and be as creative as you want. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is one of my favorite generative writing exercises. This is just to get you started in thinking about a character. One of the things I love about characters is when I think about the non-superficial things about them. Like, sure, I want to know their name and maybe their age if it's germane, but what are they afraid of? What are they ashamed of? What scares them when they wake up in the middle of the night with their heart pounding? Like, that's what I want to know. When Miranda and I go out for drinks, I'm not going to be like, hey, what's your favorite color? I'm going to be like, hey, what do you dream about? Like, what's your passion? You know, like, that's what I want to know about my friends. It's what I want to know about my characters. So I'm going to give everybody, I said 6 minutes. So yeah, I get 6 minutes. And just try to answer as many questions about this as you can. Don't worry about crafting a story now. Just worry about making a character. Is that clear to all the like techie people too? And I like, they're not necessarily techie, but all right. So everyone has 6 minutes starting now.
We have a break after, so if you need a few extra minutes, that's fine.
Okay, perfect. 1 minute warning, so if you have several left, just pick the one that sounds most interesting to you. All right, that's 6 minutes. That went pretty fast. One thing I love about doing live presentations is that I can hear everybody frantically scratching away at their pads. When you're only on Zoom, you're like, are people bored? Have they switched over to solitaire? But like in the room, like I know everybody is writing. Sometimes I think, well, 6 minutes seems like a long time to me because I'm standing here like in my own thoughts, but you know, all of the rest of you working. The reason I give this right at the beginning is because I believe that you can use this to create a story anytime. Just go to your list, pick a character, start answering these questions about them. I started this and I did a character named Mrs. Peabody, and her secret was that she works in the principal's office and she rifles through student files when no one else is in the office, looking for, you know, good and juicy information about them. And then the person that she would save in the fire was Mr. Bojangles, her cat. And Mrs. Peabody came alive from those two facts and ended up being the basis for my novella and flash collection that Off Topic Publishing is publishing. So you can do that at any time. If you get stuck, come back to your list and think about, like, what does your character keep secret? Like shame? Like, listen, I was listening to an audiobook in first grade and it was all about ducks, and I had listened to it so much that I had it memorized. Then I had giant headphones on, and so I'm like talking along with it, and I'm like quack, 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 quack. And I realized like everybody in the classroom was staring at me. Like, oh, that's like a shame thing, right? Like we all have these little shame things, maybe like wet your pants in the second grade, or maybe you quacked like a duck and everybody made fun of you and called you quacky, like for the rest of the year. Those are the things that make interesting stories. So dig into your character's shame and write stories about them. Did anyone get a screenshot of that wants it? All right, perfect. Miranda, next slide. Oh, good job. The title of the next thing. So this is just things that I wanted to talk about, how to generate ideas if you get stuck. We talked a little bit about the characters. Think about the want. What does your character want? Sometimes your character has multiple levels of want. Maybe your character wants to save the space station, but when you dig a little bit deeper in them, the reason why it's so important that they want to save the space station is because they were driving the shuttle that killed their father 10 years ago, and they carried the guilt about that for all of this time. And now they feel like if they can save the space station, they'll somehow like rectify themselves and the guilt will go away, which we all know will never work. But you can give your character multiple levels of want. And then you have to think about how is that want being thwarted? What is my want is I want Andy to be my BFF by the end of this conference. But the thwarting might be that he goes back to his room and is like, wow, thank God I don't spend time with Finn anymore because they're exhausting. The want and the thwarting, that's what's interesting. Right? Like Sue Ann and I were talking earlier this morning about how nice it feels to be in relationships that are healthy and that you feel like you don't have to work at. You know, like nobody ever told me that you don't actually have to work all the time. That's boring. Nobody cares about a healthy, happy relationship. And that's what romance books are about, right? Fell in love. That's what people want to hear about, not that, oh, you know, you sent each other cat pictures. No, like, so think about what is wording your characters want. Those are all things that you can access. What if, oh, what if it was illegal to cut your toenails in this society? Like, that was so stupid, right? That's like the first thing that popped in my head was toenails, right? But what if? I had a what if scenario. What if having a cat was illegal? And that turned into a story in which being married to a same-sex partner was illegal. And then it became a whole dystopian world about this person who's trying to hide their spouse and their cat whenever the Inquisitors come. And that ended up getting published in one of the Sweetie Cat ones that I think one of you told me about. What if something weird? You know, Sage Turtle gives wonderful workshops through a thing called the Crow Collective. So if you're not familiar with the Crow Collective, I highly recommend checking them out. Sage likes to do what if scenarios all the time, and she'll have you think of like a mundane task that you do every day, like doing the laundry, and then you write a story in which like that task no longer exists, and all of the things that can arise when you are no longer able to do laundry or something like that. So think about your what if. It can be huge, it can be small. What if you found the meaning of life and you could either tell everyone and be thought insane, or you keep it to yourself and go crazy yourself. So there's a lot of things you can do. And then the last thing I want to say that is probably the most simple way to start a story, but I've used this one several times, is a person's name and an action. Finn picked up a rock and hefted it through a plate glass window. Joanne grabbed a cup of coffee without realizing it was Lori's food. Now we have context, right? Yeah, exactly. You can always just start a story with a name and an action. You might end up changing it later, but for me, if I'm having trouble trying to figure out what to write, just having a first line will sometimes open those floodgates. So think about just name and action, and you get stuck and you don't know what else to write. Give your character an action. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'm going to give you another very brief exercise here, and then I think after this we're going to get into the structure, which is what this whole thing is supposed to be about. But I kind of have this like parent thing where I'm like really worried that people are going to get into a generative writing thing and then not know what's right, and then they're going to feel sad, and then I'm going to be sad, and then, you know, so that's why I'm trying to give you a lot of tools right now. So for just a few minutes here, I want you to think about mundane tasks and things that you worry about. These can be big things like global climate disaster, or small things like that boil on your butt. Could be anything. And I'm just going to give you like 3 minutes. So just mundane tasks and things that you worry about. And don't worry about your character's name and action right now. Just the list. Is that cool? Tech people know what you're doing? I feel like I'm staring into the screen, the people that are seeing me are. Did I say 3 minutes? We're good on time. About 1 more minute. All right. So you have a list of mundane tasks, you have a list of things that you or people can worry about. Now, all you have to do is, if you're gonna be writing a story about that, you take a character's name and give them an action combining those two things. So for example, Nancy shopped for hummus while worrying about the boil on her husband's butt, or, like Andy worried about the big case while trimming his toenails or something like that. So you can combine those things and make something weird. I had a student in one of my classes that wrote about shopping for hummus, and it turned into this whole huge, everybody in the class decided to write about hummus for the rest of that workshop. And that was Karen Richard, by the way. I don't know if you're here in the techie part. Probably like the audience, should I say? I don't know, they're not the techie people, but you all know what I mean. So does everyone feel sufficiently armed at this point to take all of these characters and turn them into a story using the structure of Flash? Sort of. Trust me on this. Next slide, please. Okay, so Flash does not have to have structure. Flash just has to have movement. You just need to give people something to care about. I tend to write a lot of what people refer to as vignettes, which tend to be super popular in the UK, which is probably why I get published a lot in UK magazines and not so much in US and Canadian magazines, because a lot of times the feedback I get on US and Canadian magazines is this is more of a vignette. Is this really a story? However, even if you don't know what to write and you want to be able to bust out a cool Flash fiction piece every time, you can use structure to give you the way in. So I've analyzed a lot of Flash fiction stories, and I found this pattern in a lot of stories that follow the structure. So just as we have structure in novels where you have your intro and the rising action and the climax and the falling action and the denouement, you might follow the beats of a story. A Flash fiction story can do the same thing. It's just going to be on a much smaller scale. So we're going to go through all of these one by one. This is just kind of like the screenshot page that has them all together. But I'm going to have everybody write your own story based on this structure. And I'm going to talk about it a little bit more, but we're going to have 5 sections. And I'm going to give everybody 5 minutes each for this section. Some of them might be along for the shorter section, but I think 5 minutes should be good for each of them. So next slide, please. All right, so we talked about the intro of your Flash fiction piece. This will be your first 2 to 3 sentences. If you're a little more verbose, it could be your first 3 to 5 sentences. But this is going to introduce your main character, their genre, and you can give your reader a hint of what's to come. So the sample that I wrote for this is Toby's late afternoon beard prickles my cheek as he brushes past it for a perfunctory air kiss. He's drinking again based on the smudges under his eyes and the smell on his breath. The sun shimmers on the water, catching my eye, so I miss the waiter's approach. So I was trying to set the scene and also give a hint of the conflict. So we understand that obviously the main character and Toby have a conflict, and that the main character doesn't want Toby to be drinking. And that's what I was aiming for in my first 2 to 3 sentences here. So think about that, take one of the characters you've been working on and write your opening, focusing on introducing the character, giving a little bit of setting and setting up what your conflict might be. Does anyone have questions about that, or do you feel like comfortable? Yeah, all right, yes. Oh, yeah, absolutely. You can write it second person, first person collective, anything you want. Workshops and do it all with it. Yeah, well, maybe we'll get off topic to do one. All right. What did I say, 5 minutes? Okay. Just about one more minute. All right, does everyone feel pretty good about your intro there? Yeah, shrugs. Yeah, that's all you give me is a shrug every time, you know? If at some point during this workshop, you're gonna be like, yeah, I'm gonna know how to like succeed it. just during the break, a train went by and all of a sudden this 53-year-old person was like all 5 years old running to the window to look out the window to see if I could see the choo-choo. But I was excited that it happened during the break. And now I'm thinking about writing a story about a train. So don't stress if you kept writing and now you have, you know, like 7, 8, 9 sentences, that's fine. I know that I have some friends that are long form novelists that we do this workshop together and they end up with somehow with like 3,000 word stories. And I'm like, y'all, like, you're kind of missing the point, but whatever works, right? There's no right or wrong. If you're writing, you're doing it right. And that's all I care about ultimately in this workshop. So next slide, please. Okay, so in your next 2 to 3 sentences, this is where you're really going to set up the conflict if you haven't already done it in the intro. This is where the reader needs to know, why are we reading this story? In my case, I did, Toby starts to order a gin and tonic, but I speak over him. Cranberry juice for me, I say, pointing a finger at the menu as if to lend weight to my words, and coffee for him. Is there conflict? Yeah, right, because we know that now this person is like, no, I'm taking control of this, I'm gonna make sure that Toby is not drinking. We don't know their relationship right now, right? Does it matter for the conflict? No, I don't think so. So your next 2 to 3 sentences, this is where you're going to kind of develop the conflict. You did the intro. You're also possibly going to give your character one small attempt at overcoming the conflict. So in this story, if the conflict is Toby's drinking, the attempt to overcome that conflict is the narrator ordering coffee. That's a small way that this narrator is trying to take control of what they want, right? It's what they want is for Toby to not drink. We talked about the wanting and the hoarding. This is what you're going into. If you're in your space station story, maybe this is the time where your character finds the bomb or finds the first bomb and then disarm it, and then boom, we're gonna find out in the next session, but it was actually 1 or 2 bombs, whatever. However you're doing it, whatever you're writing, let's dive into your conflict at this point. And then this one, I don't think, you know, I'm just gonna give you like 4 minutes for this one, so I'm still get frantic in this one. We're gonna start now. 4 minutes for the techies if you didn't hear me. Oh, one more minute. All right, about 5 more seconds to wrap up the sentence that you're on. Does anyone want to tell me what your central conflict is? No, you don't have to. Your conflict can be anything. Conflict does not have to be something huge. Conflict can be as little as I'm lost in the woods and my conflict is how I'm going to get myself out. Your conflict can be, I did a workshop like this with a group of high school students, and instead of having them write privately, we did a story together. And their central conflict was that Pete wanted to get out of trouble, but the real conflict was that his mom wasn't paying attention to him anymore because his father had died. And so we ended up doing, right? Is that right? So like, there's always an under want, right? There's always a want and then there's always an under want. So I love when we dive into that. A scientist, nice. Jed Looker, well, a scientist just opened a black hole in his lab. Keep going with that one because I already love it. Fantastic. Thanks. And you can always interrupt me and tell me, is there any there's other people in the chat? Oh, it's swirling too fast. All right. A writer is too unaware of contemporary lit. Is that a slam? I'm just at no. Julia's on the verge of losing her job. Oh, and is judged by other writers for this. You know what? That's a true story, right? I love Stephen King, but you would not believe how many of my colleagues in college education who find that they would never admit that they love Stephen King. And you're like, you know what? If people are reading, that's all I care about. I let my students choose their books if they want. I don't care. It doesn't. They can bring comic books as long as they're reading. That's what I care about. All right. So, just an idea about yourself, Mason. I think we would probably get along. All right. So we're going to move on to the meat and potatoes of our story. Some of you might have already written so much you already have meat and potatoes. And I am a vegetarian, by the way. I just meat and potatoes. That's the thing. Next slide, please. All right. So this is going to be your character's main attempt at solving the conflict. So if your character, if you don't know what your conflict is at this point, you should. But if you don't, you need to throw it in there because your character has to try to solve it. Now, my character already had a kind of small attempt at solving where they ordered the coffee over Toby. But in this one, the character is going to fail that attempt. And so the story was Toby's glare settles on me as the waiter walks away. He glances at the next table where they're gulping Bloody Marys as if they're trying to drown in them. Young women in bikinis rush the water. Their screams and giggles float on the air toward us. Toby pops a cashew into his mouth, looking away from me, from the next table, from everything. You don't know what it's like. You, your mom, that priest, you don't know. So that's not a huge failure, right? Like, we don't have anything that overtly says the main character failed. But Toby looks away from the main character, looks at the people drinking and says, you don't know me. You don't understand me. So that is a failure because what did the main character want? They wanted Toby to connect with them. Underneath, that's what they wanted, was to find that connection. It wasn't about his drinking. It was about, I need to find a way to connect with you. And the main character failed. So this is going to be where you, the writer, decide, is my main character going to solve this problem or are they going to fail it? But either way, you're gonna give them like a major attempt to solve it. Does that make sense? Maybe they're gonna, like solve the space station problem at this point. Maybe they're not. Maybe everyone's gonna blow up. Maybe that writer that doesn't understand contemporary lit is gonna, like stumble across Emily Mandel or something. And it's all gonna be good. All right, so I'm gonna give you another 4 minutes for this one, starting now. About 1 more minute. I know that was like 30 seconds long, but that's because Jennifer and Sue and Miranda were all like frantically writing over here, and I was like, I just didn't have the heart to stop you at that point.
You can talk me off. About it. It's all right. It's so sweet.
All right, so next slide, please. This is the almost end. And I want you to keep in mind that this is almost the end, because in the final one, I'm only gonna give you like 2 sentences, maybe 3. So you should be aiming for this to be like the last part of like story. And like for those of you taking notes, like story with a capital S, like this is your last chance to cram in whatever you need to be in this story, because after that is just the final, that final thing that will wrap it up. So this section, it probably could be the longest section of your story. I said 4 to 5 sentences. I've had people that have written like 19 sentences in this. Don't be that guy. But honestly, this is also where I like to drop something that my colleague Kimberly Cooper Griffin calls the truth bomb, which is the moral of your story, basically, right? And a lot of times as writers, we don't necessarily know what the moral of our story is because we're not thinking about that as we write. But if you go back and look at the things that you've written, you probably dropped a theme in there somewhere without thinking about it, because we all have these things that we want to say in our characters, what's important. So in my example, I don't know. So you remember in the last one, Toby said, you don't know me. And here's my character conceding defeat. I don't know. My bare shoulders broil in the sun, and I gratefully reach for the juice when the waiter returns, gulping it like I'm trying to drown. That's the concession, right? I can't save Toby. My mother exhausted herself against his addiction and proved that love alone can't save a person who doesn't want to be saved. That's my truth bomb, right? Love alone cannot save someone who doesn't want to be saved. The main character is giving up. You don't have to give up. You might have a happy after story. And if you wrote this story, it might be that Toby says, you know what? You're right. And I really just needed someone to show that they cared about me. And he takes the cranberry juice and he drinks it, and they leave holding hands again. And he's so happy that his stepdaughter or whoever this person is cared about him enough. And that's okay, because I love stories like that too. But also I'm a depressed person, so I like to leave people depressed after they didn't read my writing. So you're probably usually not going to get that much of a happy ending from me. But this is it. Like, other than the last couple of sentences, this is your last chance to decide if your conflict is going to be resolved, or decide that it's not going to be. It's your decision, but be intentional about it. And because this is so important, I'm going to give you the 5 minutes that I originally gave you at the beginning, so you can kind of just time it all up. All right, starting now. About 1 more minute. The reason I speak so softly when I call time is because I was giving one of these workshops once and I said 1 minute and everyone jumped and I felt so horrible. I just scared everybody out of the zone. So before we move on to the next slide, I want to say I could end my story here. I've said everything I want to say in this story, right? I gave the conflict, I introduced the characters, I showed you the setting, and I wrapped it up and it's done. You could end there. That's once you've resolved the conflict, you could end. But you have a couple more sentences, and you should, even if you've made that decision not to resolve the conflict, you should give your reader something definitive that says this story is over. So next slide, please. For myself, I just like to give something that just shows you're done reading. I might solve it for you. I might not have wrapped it up, but I have told you that we're done here and we're not going any further. In my case, I did the people at the next table lift their glasses and toast each other through a drunken haze. Toby tips his coffee to them or maybe to me. Like that's it, right? You know they're not going any further. You know that that's done. The character is given up. Toby's given up. So you just have to let the reader know, like I'm done here. And it doesn't have to be long. It could just be one sentence, but it's something that's going to show the reader that you're seeing them home. Before you get started, I just want to know when I do this with my students, either high school or college, I walk around and I look at their work while they're writing, and it's so hard not to let adult learners don't like it when you do that. I found. So anyway, I just want to let you know that. For this one, I'm just going to give you like 3 minutes, the shortest one. So starting now. About 1 more minute. 5 more seconds. I feel like I was kind of unfair to give you such a short amount of time at the end. It's because I didn't want you to really spend that much time on the end because you want to kind of make it zippy, right? Like you want to just give it that punch. So, challenge yourself to write in these short bursts and see what comes when you're under panic. Maybe you don't write well with that. I know my spouse and I tried to do NaNoWriMo and she does not work well under pressure. As soon as we were like, we're gonna write 5,000 words today, she could not think of a single thing. And yet she can write, don't give her pressure. She could probably write 5,000 words in a day, right? So it might not. Who can say you have like a fully realized couple of polishing moments and you're gonna send off a story right now? No? Who thinks you have a big sloppy wet fat mess of a story that might have some bones to it? Yeah. It was more just like toothbrushing, like mental toothbrushing, and really. All right. So you're getting like 2 for the price of 1. Who loves revision? Andy, sort of. I know you do. I love revising other people's work. Yeah. I hate house cleaning, but I love having a clean house. So I have to force myself to clean my house, but then I'm so happy I did it after. So you get 2 for the price of 1 because Marion wisely or unwisely gave me an hour and a half today. So next slide, please. Sloppy mess here, but might have some bones. Awesome. Oh, tat. Nice. All right. So I'm going to give you just a little brief hint with this big sloppy mess that you now have because yes, question. Yeah, Mason, honestly, I like putting it at that end section because it's kind of like that's when your reader's ready for you to moralize at them because they followed you through this whole journey. But if you want to put it in the beginning, do it. You can do anything as long as you can do it. And I trust you to be able, oh, good, Carla. I'm so glad that you enjoyed it. So revision, is it necessary? Yes, 100%. And here's the story that I will tell. I once wrote a story in a generative writing workshop, and it was one of those times where, boom, I just wrote something really great, and I sent it off, and I won 2nd place in a contest. And I went to one of my colleagues, and I was like, see, you don't always have to revise. And she said, if you had revised, you probably would have won 1st place. Always revise, always, even if you think you had the most stunning story, and it does happen sometimes. Sometimes that muse is on it and you get something amazing from a workshop, put it aside at least for a day, come back and reread it. So I'm going to give you a few tips on what to do with this big sloppy mess. Can you just skip it? As I said, yes, sometimes. Mason, yeah, it's great to see how you can revise. I do a whole workshop on just revision. And we will actually do exercises where I will make my students take a 1,200 word story and cut it down to a 300 word story. And it shows them how to distill the absolute essence of their story. And then they're allowed to rewrite it back up to 1,200 words if they want, but it always changes what they did with their stories. But we don't have time to do a whole revision workshop. So next slide, please. I'm just going to give you a couple of my favorite things to do in revision. And let me tell you, I hate doing this to myself, but I do it anyway. And that is to go through my stories sentence by sentence and ask myself, does this sentence do one of these things? Does it develop conflict? I'm standing over here, sorry for the techie people, but I can tell that there's a couple of people trying to take screenshots, so I'm trying to get myself out of it. Does it develop conflict? Is it somehow an attempt of the resolution of the conflict? Does it develop character in some way? Does it show a relationship between the main characters? You saw in some of my sentences, it might not have been actively developing the conflict, but it was showing the relationship between the characters. Does it aid in plot development, or at the very end, does it tie up loose ends? Is there something you left unsaid that needed to be tied up, like Toby raising his glass at the end? The only thing that does is tie up a loose end at the end of the story. Your sentences should do one of these things. In the original version of this story, I had the waiter writing the order on the pad and noting and the narrator saying something about their intractability. Well, you get that the main character is intractable from them ordering coffee over Toby. We don't need to see the waiter writing down the order. You know that he's going to take the order and go away and get it. So go through that and see if you have that waiter hovering in the background taking the order. In flash fiction, you probably don't need it. In your novel, you might leave it in, right? You're like, okay, fine. The waiter's taking the order. You don't need it in flash fiction. So go through your story sentence by sentence and ask yourself these questions. And then next slide, and as I promise, this is going to be the end of it. This is something that some people call filler words. I have an entire spreadsheet of words that I go through and look for in all of my works. And this can be important in a lot of ways. First of all, was, is, and can. I look for those, and sometimes they're important. Finn was walking, maybe that's important to the story, but maybe Finn strode, maybe Finn, lumbered through the room. Like, if you can get rid of was, you might have something more active. In fact, I was lying in bed awake at 2 o'clock in the morning last night and thinking, oh, my first sentence of my novel is my mother was rage cleaning. And I woke up in the middle of the night, I'm like, why wouldn't she just, my mother rage cleaned around me? Like, what for? Like, these are the things I think about when I can't sleep at 2 o'clock in the morning. But those are things that you can think about omitting. These might not be your words. I use that like it's friggin' salt on poached eggs. I don't know why I use that all the time. So I have to go through and take out that. See and saw, that's another thing that kind of removes your reader from the action, right? Like Kim saw a car careening out of the bushes, but how about just a car careening from the bushes? That's more exciting, it's more immediate, the reader is right there. We don't need to know that Kim saw it because if Kim's the main character, we know that Kim sees, right? Just let the car careen from the bushes. For me, seems and appears, again, it's just stuff that removes the reader from your story a little bit. Finn seemed overwhelmed. No, Finn yanked on her hair, cried because they looked at their to-do list, and then Marion gave him something else to do. There was editing, and it was scary, and then very. If you have very in your flash fiction, just take it out. I think it was Mark Twain that said, change every very to damn. And then your editor will remove it. You won't have lost anything. You're not. Like, did you ever see that? This is old, but the Dead Poets Society, Robin Williams' character talks about a person isn't very sad, they're morose, that isn't very loud. It's like sonorous, So think of like more active words. This is especially true in flash fiction, but carry this to your novels and it will make your reader more engaged with your work. So and though, I just put that in there because those are mine. My first novel, every character started a sentence with so, and my editor said, get rid of all of these, and well, that's how they talk. And she's like, not every character says the same thing, like they all sound the same thing. So at that point, I didn't know to do like the SO star, and so like I had every word that started with SO. I had to look at it, it was horrible. So use this, but also make your own list. And flash fiction, like it's so short, right? So you're not going to lose anything by going through your work and looking at every use of the word and asking yourself if you need it. You might need that was. It might need to stay in there, but be intentional about it. And I think that's all I have. So I'm going to let everybody out a little bit early. And I don't know, Mary, can you go to the next slide? I can't remember if I decided to do anything. No, that's it. All right. So I hope everybody enjoyed this. I know I did. And here's how to find me if you have questions. If you need the slides, I'm happy to send them out. So if you want to look at them, if your screenshots didn't work, I am available at FinnBurnett.com. I'm on Twitter at Finnian Burnett. My email is FinnBurnett70@gmail. I know I should have like the birth year, like why do I have that in there? Like now everyone knows how old I am. But does anyone have any questions? Andy?
Yeah, this comes out, and I know people on the section here, but this comes out of a conversation we had last night, where you talk about the alien man. And when you know, sometimes read some of my stuff, right, I like to read it a little obscure. I want the reader to sort of understand what they want out of the story, and it will be separate, you'll get there, but I like the end. In Flash, can you do that in a short story, a little bit more than Flash, can you do that, or are you looking to really just, this is what the story is, this is the punch?
So for the people that maybe couldn't hear Andy, he wants to know if you can leave the ending a little ambiguous, and I would say 100%. Yeah, I love when I leave a story and I'm like, did that, what? I don't like to kind of have questions when I finish a story, but I need enough to feel like I can at least discern what I think the meaning is. So I think having ambiguity is great, but just make sure that you've given enough clues that your readers can like think about it afterwards. They don't have to know. You could mean something completely different than what your reader meant, but or what they think they meant, but as long as they can glom onto something. But I still think like think about, if you're not going to tie everything up for them, at least give them a way to let them know that the story is finished. Does that make sense?
Someone's asking if you're on Instagram.
I should be, but I am not. Like I'm in the market for an intern that's happy to do Insta for me. So if that's you, please TikTok too. Slides, for the slides, I think, Mary, can we email them to everyone that's registered for the conference? Yeah, we'll just do that. And then if you don't want them, you can just delete them or print them off and feed them to your dog or something. All right, I don't know, I hope I didn't, I know, I get kind of give on Twitter too for, reasons, but yeah, I'm still there because some people. Thank you, Mason, it was nice meeting you and your contemporary lit slam, but we'll get back to that later. Did I miss any questions in the chat? All right, fly free, humans. Show me your stories.
So we're gonna take a break now until 11:30, so about a half-hour break. There is a cafe at the train station, so it is walkable in half an hour if you feel like going out. There's also fountains here in the building if you just want some water.
Before you shut them off, Mason, I'm just teasing you.
I'm gonna leave the video on, but I'm gonna mute the microphone so that everybody gets to hear all our mundane conversation.
Yes. You good? Yeah, perfect. All right. Get going and.
I'm just gonna go from.
You bet. Probably get going in like 5 minutes for everyone online. Just to give people a chance to get back in here on a break. Have your laptop or writing stuff ready. We're gonna have some participation in this. I would love to hear from y'all in the chat box. I go here. I can see both at once. That's what I'm gonna do. Look at that. Not real. Yes.
You'll have to teach me some tips and. Oh. Oh, like you look gorgeous.
Oh, thanks. I feel like my face is so up close and personal, but I'm hoping their screens are smaller than this one.
Yeah. I've never seen it. I'm not finding the college.
Okay, great. Let's give it like an extra 2 minutes for everyone to kind of get settled in and back. Or at like 11:32 or time.
Guys, something that one of you can out a certain rate out. Yeah, I think you're going to. I think you're going to.
Well, you're very welcome.
Andy, I need your help.
Oh.
I'm trying to gather interest in who might just want to have pizza, either delivered here or maybe I would have somebody that to look it up. And when this is over, can you tell me when you gather people when they go to and I'll call and order and talk that. I want pizza. Well, I want pizza. You feel like you're going to talk to you. I don't want to be here. Okay, I already had to know.
Oh, that's also recording. Okay, definitely not pointing at me. Sorry about that. Okay.
This is just a backup.
Okay. Awesome. Well, why not? All right.
Yeah.
I told the online people we get started at 11:32, just to give people a chance to get settled in. We'll give it 1 minute and then we'll get going.
Yeah, so maybe we should just order like a variety of pizzas and not make special words. Like a cheese pizza, a mushroom pizza, pepperoni. Is everyone okay?
All right. Oh, it's getting an echo. Okay, sounds great. Okay, well, yeah, maybe we'll just come closer to me. This one off. Okay. And just use something closer to my face.
Not minimize Zoom when you're recording.
What other stuff is all this and notification icons. I know, right?
Were you in here?
I was, yeah.
Okay.
I just extended it so that I could have my notes here.
Are you screen sharing?
I shouldn't be. I think it's just, yeah. All right. Can you hear me now? How is my sound now, online people? Is it less echoey there?
Can you mute it for a second?
I'm gonna mute it for a second because that is a request. Hold on. It's a pizza question.
It is a pizza.
I'm so excited. Better re-echo from online perspective. Love that. That's great to hear. Fantastic. Okay. Well, then I think we'll get started here. If I can figure out where the heck my mouse is. That probably would, I could have announced that we were getting started after I found my mouse. Let me see here. Ha, there it is. I'm great at technology. This is gonna go awesome. Okay. Any other pizza related questions? Any other things that we should tune into? Are we okay? Okay, perfect. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Miranda Krogstad, and I am a spoken word poet. Mostly I do creative writing workshops across Western Canada, across Canada in general, but my job is something different every day. A big part of it is writing for different people who want writing from me. So I've done some writing with the Calgary Zoo, kind of promotional like conservation stuff for them. I have written a German bike commercial. I have performed in a spandex onesie at a charity event. It's definitely something different every day and I love it. But today is not about me, it's about you and your writing goals. This workshop is for pretty much anyone at any point in their career, whether you have been doing this for years and years and years, decades upon decades, or whether you are brand new to even thinking about what your goals are for your writing. This workshop's for you. I think no matter where we are at in our career, we can always consider kind of what we want our career to look like, what we want our writing to do for us. And so hopefully today will help you get some clarity on what you want that to look like and what you want it to be. And then we'll set some specific goals to help us attain what we want to attain as writers. Success looks different for everyone within writing. And so for the first part, I'm going to ask a few reflection questions to just get you thinking about what you want your writing to do for you. What is the most important thing that you'd like to accomplish with your writing? For those of you in the room, I have some cardstock, I have some Post-its, I have some Sharpies, I have some pencils. So if you're a more like visual person and at any point like want to steal any supplies from here, you're more than welcome. Some people like to kind of put different goals on different Post-its and arrange them in different ways. Whatever your process is, these are for you and for your convenience. So feel free to raid that stash if you want anything up there. Yeah, go ahead, pass those around. That is just fine. Okay, so I'm going to start with just the basics of talking about money, reach, progress, and enjoyment when we think of our writing. So I'm going to ask you guys a series of questions and then probably give you like a couple minutes for each question to jot down notes for yourself. I find that the more specific you get, the better. So, you know, for example, when I'm talking about my money goals for my writing, at the beginning of my career, it would have looked like I need to make rent, pay groceries, and pay my agent. So that would have been like at the beginning of my career. At this point, it might look like, you know, making a pension, like building a pension, getting a down payment, and, you know, paying off my student loans or whatever. So whatever your specific goals are, the more concrete you can make them for your life, the more it can be something that you can calculate really physically, the better. So I'm going to jump into it. The first question I want you to consider is money. What financial goals do you have for your writing? So people have different levels that they are expecting of their writing, and there's no wrong answer. So some people do not want to expect any money from their creative work. They just want it to be pure enjoyment. Some people would love to have a little pocket cash, kind of win the odd prize with it. Some people want to have enough to have a roof over their head and food on their plate, and that's enough for them. And some people want to kind of like build up to living a comfortable life with their writing. So just take 2 minutes here, and it could be a quick little note, or it could be a little more in depth. Try to get really clear about what kind of financial support you want from your writing. So just 2 minutes here to think about that. Might feel long for some people, might feel short for some people. I'm going to give us 2 minutes here. Think about what financial goals you have for your writing. What do you want to build to? And what do you want it to be right now? Oh, and Rosemary's asking, are there slides for the presentation? No, just my beautiful face. That's all you get for a visual.
All we need.
Thank you. Got about 1 minute left. See if you can make it even a little more specific to your life, dollar amounts or specific goals that you have, whether they're prize amounts or things in your life that cost. You could add up to a specific number that becomes more attainable for you. And 5 seconds. Okay. So this first part's going to feel quite rapid fire. We're going to just go through each section real quick. But the next one I want you to consider is reach. So what measurable goals do you have for the quantity and quality of your audience? For some people, they just want to connect really deeply with a few readers. For some people, they want to connect more widely. So try to pin down exactly what you want your reach to be. So for example, I don't care if anyone sees my work, I'm just happy to create it for me. That is more the way that I write, actually. I don't care too much how many people see it, as long as it does something for me. I want to reach a few people who love my work, so quality over quantity. I want to reach a moderate number of people, maybe have some local success who like it a moderate amount. Or I want to reach a large number of people who know my work a little bit. So think about that. Some other questions that might help you is whether there's a geographic level of success you're hoping for, local, provincial, English-speaking countries around the world, specific countries you'd like to reach with your work. Finn talked earlier about, the UK being kind of a market and that sort of thing. So different people might like different countries, for example. And for some of you, you might consider social media. I am not a tech person. I don't even have the TikTok. I'm with you, Finn. I'm like, I need somebody to do that for me. But for some of you, you might want to have a certain number of followers or a certain number of meaningful comments, right? Okay, so a couple minutes here to think about all that. What do you want your reach to be? Get specific. 10 seconds to wrap up your thought. Okay. So the next thing I want us to consider is progress. So it means different things for different people, but how will you know that your work is advancing, and how important is that to you, that you're growing as a writer or growing your career? So for some people that is, I'm gonna learn or implicate like 3 or 4 different writing techniques per year. So I'm going to learn something new or push my writing in 3 or 4 different ways per year. Some people, it's going to be, I want to perform at venues with like 10 more people each year, right? So instead of 10, the next year I'm going to do 20 people, the next year I'm going to do 30 people, the next year I'm going to do 40 people until the room is, 400 people or whatever. So different people have different goals, how fast you want your progress to be or how fast you expect it to be. These are all questions to ask yourself about progress. How can you measure your progress? What is important to you in terms of progress? Give you a couple minutes here to define progress for yourself. This is one of the things that sound the simplest, but are actually difficult to pin down sometimes. How will you tell if you are making progress in your career? What does progress look like to you? About a minute left. Try to dig a little deeper, get a little more specific if you have the time to. What specifically does progress look like to you in your writing technique, in your career? What are some measurable things that you could notice that tell you that you have made progress? Maybe specific time frames of when you want to accomplish certain things. Ten seconds to wrap up your thought. Okay, 2 more categories. So enjoyment. This is a big one that I think some people don't take the time to consider, but it's huge. For some people, how much you enjoy your work is more important than who sees it, is more important than what kind of money you make, is more important than anything else. For some people, they'd rather grind and not have the work be as enjoyable, but have a product that they're really proud of. So maybe they won't enjoy the process as much, but they'll enjoy the result. So where are you on that spectrum? Do you want to write or perform or publish the work that you enjoy creating and you want to enjoy every single step of the process? Or, don't mind putting in a bit of legwork, but you want the majority of the process to be enjoyable? Or are you one of those people who's like, I will grind and I will get there? So decide for yourself what level of enjoyment you want to get from this, how important that is for you, the enjoyment of the process versus the enjoyment of the result. About 45 seconds left. If you can, try jotting down some really specific things that make the work more enjoyable for you. Are there certain moments that show you, oh, this is why I do what I do? Are there moments of enjoyment? Are there measurable signs to show that, okay, I'm accomplishing the level of joy that I want from this? Ten seconds. Okay. And of course, you can revisit any of these sections later too. If you're like really finding that one section is more important to you and you have a lot to say about it, feel free to circle back later. The final thing I'm going to ask you, if there are any other answers for you of why you do what you do and why you write. So trying to think of what you're trying to get out of this. So is it skills and practice? Is it just, I want to get better at blank? And that's part of it for you. Is it to create a better headspace? For example, for myself, I write to work things out mentally and get myself to a better place. Is it just to have calm, creative time worked into your day? Is it to document important people or moments? Like, what is it that you get out of your writing? So any other answers that you have not covered in the other sections, this is probably something where answers will pop up for you that are specific to you and your life. So what did you get out of your writing? Why do you do it? How does it make you feel? What are you trying to accomplish with it? What does it give you? Take a couple minutes there to gather some ideas of what writing does for you, what it gives you. Ten seconds. Okay. So as I said, some of you will want to circle back to this later. I see some pencils just madly still going, which is great. That means you have some ideas that you can continue. But hopefully that got the ball rolling, started you thinking about kind of what you want from your writing. Really quickly here, I want you just to put a number from 1 to 10 beside each section. So beside money and beside, let me see, reach, beside progress, beside enjoyment, and beside the others, just put a number from 1 to 10 based on how important that section is to you. So maybe you care a lot about enjoyment and don't care at all about money. Maybe you care a lot about progress, about improving, but you don't care that much about enjoyment. Whatever the numbers are to you, to clear yourself up on what is important. I will warn you that when you prioritize every section, it usually means that nothing really fully gets accomplished. I find that if you put something that's really important to you, like, okay, it's really important to me to have wide reach, that's something really attainable. Whereas if you try to say that everything's important to you, then nothing ends up being important. So try to have like one section that's a 10, maybe 2, and then adjust down for the other ones of saying, okay, if this didn't happen, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. So just a quick minute here to prioritize each section, deciding how important each of those things are to you. And maybe there's subsections that are really important. Like it's really important to you to progress in your flash fiction writing, but otherwise you don't really care too much about the technique. And maybe enjoyment is really important to you, but you don't mind grinding a little bit. So adjust the numbers for the different parts of your section. And if there's mini goals within that. 30 seconds. Okay, so we're going to circle back to more specific goals to do with each of these sections shortly. But first, I just want to put a little pin in that and ask you to consider how much you're willing to give your work. We've kind of talked about what we want your work to give you, what you want to get out of your work. It's also important to think about what you want to put into it. You might have touched on this a little bit with your initial notes and goals, and that's totally fine. But I'll just kind of gab a little bit about these different things that you could be giving your work, and then you might add to your goals or take little notes that if I spark anything for you. So with money, there are some people who are willing to just invest in their career. So I know a lot of people who have side jobs, day jobs, and they are willing to pay for their book to be published, for example, just self-publish their book so that they have this beautiful thing in their hands that they made and that's out there for no other reason than, hey, it's beautiful and I have it and I can read it. So maybe you're somebody who wants to invest in your work. Maybe you're somebody who doesn't want to pay anything, but you also don't need to be paid. So like open mics and just sharing, and that's the kind of value you get from it. Some people want to break even, so they'll invest in their work, but they have to get it back. And some people want to make a living, like an honest living from it, right? So depending on where you are in that spectrum, that might help you to kind of shape your money goals. Socialization and promotion. I know a ton of writers that are introverts. I myself am an ambivert, which I think surprises some people. Like I'm happy to be here socializing with all of you, but I'm definitely going to go home and drink a cup of tea and talk to no one all night. So different people have different levels of socialization that they're okay with. And writing is a bit of networking and self-promoting and getting to know people. And so deciding for yourself what you're willing to invest in your work can be helpful to say, listen, I don't really want to like talk myself up. I have an agent for that reason. I'm awful at promoting myself. So different people can find different solutions for that, but saying, hey, this is the amount of networking I'm willing to put in. This is the amount of time I'm willing to stay after each performance to like talk to people and get to know people, or like, hey, I'm depleted as soon as I read, I'm out of there. So I'm okay with, you know, my numbers and my reach lowering in order to keep my mental health, for example. So thinking about the amount of socialization and promotion that you're willing to put in. For me, for Instagram, and as I said, I don't even have TikTok, I am willing to put in the amount of work that I enjoy. So I will post when I'm genuinely enjoying an experience, and I find that this will enrich it and not detract from it. I find that sometimes posting on social media takes me out of the moment, and sometimes it pulls me in and just helps me give gratitude for that. So for me on social media, that's my rule. For other people, they have the goal of posting 5 times a day, which to me blows my mind. But for some people that's enjoyable, or that gets the reach and the results that they want. So thinking about how much you're willing to invest in those kind of things, and how much would just drain you, and how your results will be affected by that. So you can make a choice to never leave your house and just write for yourself, and that's totally fine, as long as you're okay with the results of it reaching less people, right? So thinking about socialization and promotion. Time is a big thing as far as investing, where some people prefer small amounts of time whenever it's convenient. You know, okay, inspiration striking me now, I'm going to sit down and write. Some people treat it as a part-time job. So I put in X hours a week on these days. And some people treat it like it's a half-time or full-time job, right? So it really depends on who you are and what you want to invest. We'll talk a little bit later about this, but you might find that different places and different times are more productive for you. If you have kids, you have to consider that too, right? Like, are you going to write before they get up and after they go to bed? Are you going to write after? I know some people who write after they drop their kid off at school in the car, just for that like 10-minute window where they like have it to themselves. So finding time that's realistic for you. How much do you want to invest in terms of time? And then we have sweat, or what some people call shit sandwiches. So it's basically the things that you have to deal with, the shit sandwiches that you have to eat in order to have success in your career. How much unenjoyment do you want? Essentially, right? Like, how much are you willing to kind of toil through to make it better? Some people abhor revision. I'm one of the people, as we mentioned earlier, that actually likes revising. I find joy in that. Some people hate it, and they would rather have a work that doesn't win all the top prizes, but they enjoy making, rather than going through that cumbersome process for themselves. There's no right or wrong answer here, just deciding kind of how much sweat you're willing to put into it, how many shit sandwiches you're willing to eat for your work. So deciding how much of that you are willing to invest, the unenjoyment factor. Okay, so hopefully that helped to clarify some of the things for you and helps you add some little notes to what you want from your work. Now we're going to get into specific goal setting and journaling. So the biggest thing I want you to consider is, what are your end goals? So what are you hoping to do with your work? What's the first step towards that? So for example, a few years ago, one of my big goals was to do a TED Talk. And I was just a baby performer and I had no idea how I would accomplish that. But essentially it's about setting the goal at the end and then creating little steps that could build towards that big dream. So for that goal, I said, okay, well, if I were a TEDx organizer, like, what would I want to see from a performer to show that they are able to do that? I would have to see them speak somewhere and show the skills that it would take to do a TED Talk. So I was like, okay, so I need a show with kind of TED Talk style things. All right. So I applied for some grants to make a show that I could invite those organizers to. And I said, I'm just going to keep inviting them and giving them free tickets until they show up and until they love me. And luckily it was my first show. I just got really lucky with it. The first show after I had decided to do that. But I was willing to just keep on going, keep on inviting them to stuff until they were tired of seeing me and hearing me and said, okay, fine, let's do this. So basically whatever your goal is, try to work your way backwards from it, right? So for publishing, I knew I wanted to publish a book at some point. And so you start off by just Googling, like, okay, where are the publishers? Who are other people that write work like me that have been published? What publishing companies are they with? Set up meetings with people who have published their books, find out what they did, what kind of process they had to go through. Start drafting, your manuscript, pulling it all together with the, the comparables and all the things that the publishers are going to ask for. Break it down into all these little tiny, like comically small baby steps for yourself. So that is what we're going to do now. Is I would love for you to write one bigger goal that you could work towards. One thing that's like, this is almost silly, like how big it is, but like, how would I work towards that? So what is your kind of big thing that you're like, how cool would it be if I did blank? And then work your way backwards from there. What are the little comically small baby steps that would build up to that? For this, I'm going to give you 5 minutes. If you finish one goal, do a second, do a third. We have endless ideas for our writing, I feel like, that we could get out of it. It could be as big as a huge stage that you want to perform on, or as small as I want to get better at this skill set, and then make baby steps to go towards that. I'll give you 5 whole minutes. Think about specific goals. You can look through your notes that we wrote earlier of the different things you want to get out of your work. That might help you think about what goals you want to set. What would be so cool if you could do this? It might be helpful to think about the things you read or the things you watch or the places you go that you could aspire to also be a part of. A magazine you really like that you want to be published in. A space you really like that you want to perform in or read in. A publishing house that you really respect that you want to get published by. You can Google stuff if you need to as well to get more specific ideas. So 3 minutes. Right ahead. Oh, here, I'll just scroll over to there. Sorry, it's kind of awkward. Just yeah, let me if I miss a comment up there. I can be pretty oblivious, but it's not on purpose. Got about 1.5 minutes left. As always, if there's a way to make it more specific, break it down further, or if you want to write a second goal, feel free. $15 seconds to wrap up your thought. Okay, out of curiosity, is there anyone who's brave enough to share one of their goals? One of their big goals? Finn, I love that. Bring it.
One of my goals is to eventually win the CBC short story.
Yes, you're gonna do it. CBC Short Story Prize. There's, I mean, no one here is gonna be surprised. You're gonna do it.
You voted it twice.
I was using your like step thing.
Perfect, tell me.
Step one is the long list for it.
Step one, long list.
Short
Short list.
Step three, I like to win.
And, oh yeah,
But then
right.
the actual one was to submit the content.
Submit first, right.
And the actual one would be write the story.
Yes, write the story, exactly. So you know what? It's funny how when we break it down, it's like when we get to those comically small steps, we're like, okay, I just have to write the first paragraph, or I have to have the first idea, or that sort of thing. Yeah, absolutely. That's a great example of how we break it down, how we start really small, of just like write the damn thing, and then you can submit it, and then long list, and then short list. So these might be goals that happen over a number of years. And hey, if you got to step like 3 and you never even like accomplished that last thing, you've still gotten further than if you never tried. So I love that. Any other examples of goals? Yes. Okay, great. I can share my goals. I would love that for you, Mason. Do you want to do that? Please.
I think Ian was before me. Ian can go.
Unmute yourself. Is it unmutable, Marion? I don't know.
Can anyone hear me?
Try saying words and see what happens.
Thanks for that, Mason. You can,
No, maybe not.
we'll see if there's time for 2.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So you want me to go? Okay,
Is there
I
a way
would
to turn
say,
up the volume? I'm the worst at technology. I don't even know where the volume is on your computer.
nobody can hear me? Hello, hello, hello.
Oh, yeah, it might just come up here.
Anyway,
I don't know. They're gonna have to type it in. Sorry, I think you're gonna have to type it in.
Darn.
Sorry, Mason, do you have them written somewhere where we could see it?
mhm.
I could read it out for you. I could be your audiobook voice.
Oh, wow. Ooh, we'll see what you get.
Okay, so Ian says, my TEDx, how to enjoy conversation more. Stop talking, what I want to see from the performer. Why they put me on stage to talk about recovering. Okay. The content to share, the 3 things of listening, invitation, and questions. Okay, so you have like a lot of really specific ideas, and it looks like you've broken it down even into topics that you can like journal on and start writing specific things. That's great. Yes. Oh, somebody's saying I can hear you. Oh, maybe it's just us who can't hear you. Mason, I'm so sorry. All the at-home people are hearing you just fine. It's just not us who can hear you. Okay, let's see. You have written it out though. So I'm an actor and a writer, and I've always practiced both art forms. I'm an ambivert as well. Love that. Yep. And year by year, I would like my company's projects to become more well known and to monetize. So that's definitely something that you can build up to and to think, okay, which companies could pay me for this? Which ones have the most funding? Which grants have the most funding? And then breaking your goals down from there. I love that. That's fantastic. I'm gonna have to look up your pieces. Is it like screenplay type stuff? That's so cool. Amazing. Fantastic. Did I miss any up there, Marion?
No, it was Jen.
Okay, let me see if I can scroll up. You guys get the full Miranda experience of technology. Did I scroll past? Oh, Jet. Oh, hold on. Back down? Okay.
You're good on the bottom.
Oh, down to the bottom.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, publish a collection of short stories. That's great. Yeah, absolutely. And so similar to Finn, you'll probably start with oh, wow.
So amazing they banned me in Florida.
That's a good goal, to write something so amazing to ban me in Florida. Amazing. And neurodivergent. I mean, TBI, sorry, I thought you said TMI. I was like, that's not TMI. Okay. And people have always told me my work is original and unique, so I want to create my own platform for it. I love that, Mason. Fantastic. Yeah. These are great and specific goals. Yeah, hence my company idea. Fantastic. Jed says to finish editing a short story. Yeah, exactly. That's a great like first step. Fantastic. Rosemary says to publish a hybrid collection of memoir or poetry. Wow, we have so many cool people with so many cool goals. And I love that you guys are starting to think about how to break that down, that we have these big goals that are like, wow, what if this happened? And then breaking them down into really tangible steps. That's fantastic. So the next thing I want you to consider is what obstacles could get in the way of the progress or success with your goal. So for a lot of people, this is scheduling. Just we're busy people with busy lives. You know, looking at your calendar right now and asking yourself which days and times would work best for you to work on this. Or are you like, you know, Elizabeth Gilbert and would rather have a 30-minute egg timer each day after they get home from work? Would you rather have a tiny little time each day? Would you rather have certain days and times that you schedule in weekly? Like, okay, Monday, Wednesdays, I'm putting in like 5 hours or whatever. Does your schedule revolve around your work or your kids and you'll have to have productive time outside of that? Is your schedule unpredictable and you'll have to look at the beginning of each week and schedule things in? For myself, because I have a fairly unpredictable schedule, I'll schedule a retreat twice a year where I just do admin stuff. I just send out all the applications I want to do and reach out to all the different organizations I want to perform with. So depending on who you are and how your schedule is, how does it look for you to make time for this? So thinking about obstacles, it can also be things outside of scheduling. It might be money, it might be insecurities even, like how can you overcome those? How can you work through that? So thinking about the obstacles that could get in the way of your goals, and maybe a quick little note as to how you're going to combat that, right? So trying to think of what could get in the way and how you might navigate it. Think about scheduling, think about your own insecurities or hurdles. Maybe it's a lack of knowledge. Maybe you'll need to do some research. Made this part of the workshop sound very successful, very exciting. Well, 30 seconds left. We've already got some answers popping up in the chat box. That's great. What are some obstacles? Maybe a quick little word or two about how you'd overcome them. In 5 seconds. Okay, let's share a couple answers on, oh, we already have a hand. I love that. Bring it on.
We'll do it in the room.
Yes.
They're so amazing.
Yes, please do.
So number one word. You know, long staring at computer screen.
Yes,
So I really want to move on to another computer and keep on typing.
that's a real thing.
That's a big
Yeah,
one.
work and how much energy it takes, for sure.
Guilt.
Guilt, that's
There
a
are
big one,
so
I'm
many
sure.
other things I should do.
So many other
And
things I should
To move
do.
around that is if everything is important, nothing is important.
If everything's important, nothing is important. That's a big one for a lot of
Schedule
us.
Time for the shoulds as well, with my work around.
Ooh, scheduling the times for the shoulds. I like
The
that.
final one was writer block / insecurity. Does anyone even want to read it? And that is to share snippets, go to workshops, join writers groups, and keep going.
Hey, beautiful. Yes, that's exactly the kind of thing we're looking for. Did everyone here in the Zoom room hear that? Yes? Or do I have to repeat some things, summarize it real quick? There were some really great things touched on. Writer's block was the last one, and the kind of guilt and like, you know, who's going to read this? Who'll care? That little negative Nancy in our heads that's going, you know, you're worthless. No one's going to want to read it. It's trash. Why do you even try? We love that voice. Isn't that great? Isn't that the best to have that on our shoulder? Oh my gosh. But absolutely, those are things that we're going to have to navigate. And when we think of it ahead of time, we can prepare for it and create some safety nets for it. Okay. I'm going to go back to the Zoom room real quick. So we had one obstacle from Rosemary saying that obstacles are fear regarding publishing the memoir. It's vulnerability. Yeah, vulnerability is super tough, especially when you're publishing something that personal, for sure. And so I would love to see kind of how, what steps you'll take to create safety nets against that. Of, you know, are you going to share with a really safe audience member first, just like one friend or one family member that you're like, okay, they're for sure not going to judge me for this. Then maybe sharing with a small group of people you're more comfortable with, and then working your way up to larger groups. How will you make some baby steps to kind of safeguard yourself against that? Carla says demands of family and friends on my time. That is real for a lot of us. And so scheduling it in, and finding those little niches of times, whatever works for your life. If it's 10 minutes a day, if it's, you know, a day a week, whatever you can fit in. Ian says, this is how I moved to TEDx. Oh yeah, thanks for waiting for the why question. Why they put me on the stage. What I gained, sharing my vision, promoting We Listen circles. Cool. Amazing. I'm trying to kind of summarize as I go. Play a reflection of why we aren't listening to each other and the horror of where we are heading with the oh my gosh, I can't say words right now, of lives full of separation, resolved at the end with the audience talking to each other. Okay, really clear vision there. Really cool. 3 to 4 people stand in the circle, have the audience hear them. Really clear vision coming through. All valuable things to acknowledge. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, great. Yes, my son has agreed to read. Ooh, amazing. Okay, perfect. So you already have like a really like safe audience to share with. I like the comically small steps. Fantastic. Yes, I have big goals, but I'm not always sure how to make them happen. I'm with you. I am with you. Learn who to share your work with and what your expectations are, such as comments on content, editing, and enjoyment. For sure, asking your readers like what you are asking them for, not just like what do you think, but like I'm really concerned about the character development in the story, or I really would love you to look for adverbs and make sure I don't have any of those in there. Making sure that you're getting the kind of feedback that you want. You don't want the advice of what they do if it was their story. You want the advice of what they would do if it was your story. So try to give them some feedback as to what you're trying to create. My voice sounds silly to me. Have a hard time reading my own writing. Jed, that's a real thing. I hate when people play my videos with me in the room. I will walk out. But it is something to like kind of acclimatize ourselves to. So it would be interesting to see how you navigate that, whether it's just, you know, listening in small doses, or maybe you don't do that. Maybe you find a way not to. But yeah, have a hard time reading my own writing. Yeah, what are some baby steps you can take for that? Absolutely. These are great. Any from the room that you guys want to share here? There's so many great ones in the Zoom. I know everyone's good. Balance. Yes, balance is a big one for sure. Yeah, I think like in terms of like scheduling and life and all that. Yeah, and I think that sometimes we're taught this culture of like you have to grind and go to extremes of like it has to be an instant success right away. And I think building in a healthy practice of like, I'm going to set a realistic goal for myself and I'm going to publish a book in 10 years, right? That's maybe something that is better for a certain life or a certain person. And so I think there's real honor in considering kind of what you want to protect in your life, what you're not willing to give up for your writing, to make it a manageable pace and an enjoyable process. Okay. Now I would love for us to write down one small step. What is one small step that you could take tonight? So we're talking about comically small steps. I'm talking like 5 minutes or less. You sit in front of your computer, you do one thing. What is the one small step that you could take tonight to start your goal? Is that scheduling time for it? Is that making a broken down task list for it? Is that creating a folder for all the documents that you'll be needing for it? Is that doing a quick Google search to see what the steps would be? What is the first small step that you could take? I'm just going to give you guys a minute here. One small step that you could take tonight. And 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay, so some of the comically small steps in the chat box. Let me just go up here. Okay, so first one is from Mason saying, one small goal I could accomplish tonight, decide my company name. I have several ideas, to choose from. Yeah, comically small step, but it's a start. This is exactly the kind of step we're looking for, though. Is like nothing that's going to be so daunting that you don't want to start it. That's perfect. Just choose a name. Susan Cook says writing in the early morning before checking any media. Yeah, that's a good time for sure. And also like before checking social media, we could get all sucked into that. I get that. Ian says self-promote my latest article on Instagram and face the challenges that I don't really get the social media scene. It's uncomfortable, but I'll do it. That's amazing. Yeah, just promote your latest article on Instagram. Love that. That would be super uncomfortable for me also. So I'm impressed that you're doing it because I'm sure not. Mason says, good idea, Susan. That would probably work for me too. Yeah, writing in the early morning before checking social media. Yeah, absolutely. We don't realize how much time we just kind of throw at social media. Why not replace that with some writing? Ask another writer to read some of my manuscript to get some objectivity. Great one, Rosemary. Yeah, and that accountability, huge to have somebody else checking in on you. Can I do this on Tuesday at 10 a.m.? You can do it whenever you want. I mean, we can make time when we have time. Schedule that in. Sure, why not? Leslie said small step could be to sit down and write for a few minutes daily. What is a realistic time frame? Are there competing demands? Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So, I mean, all of these are good questions to consider. That could be your first step, is kind of journaling about that maybe, and putting it into practice of, setting a time frame for yourself. Write my 6 words memoir tonight. I love that small step, Marina. That's great. What a great way to break it down. Jed says, write a sentence, then another. Yes, this is how we get it done. I often compare it to like going to the gym. I hate exercising. And if I go to the gym, I tell myself I'll be there for 5 minutes. That is my expectation of myself. Sometimes I have been there for 5 minutes and I have left. But usually once you get started, you're like, okay, this is not so bad. So with writing, if you just sit down and ask yourself to write a sentence, often that's enough to kind of get the ball rolling and keep going. I agree, Jed. Yeah. He said keeping his butt in the writer's chair at his desk was the hardest challenge for him, as in not leaving the desk. Absolutely. Yeah, that's real, Mason, for sure. Any from the room here? Yes.
Because I'm here at the tree.
Yep.
So tonight I will go home and set up my computer with Airbnb.
Yeah.
I'll set up my computer, get it all set up. So that in the
Amazing.
morning, it's easy to put the computer instead of opening my life.
That is great. Actually, that's a great tip. Is she just said that she's going to go back to her Airbnb, set up her computer so it's ready for her in the morning. So just like prepare that environment. So instead of going to the iPad, now it's easier to go to the laptop and actually do some work. So setting things up for yourself, making your lunch so that you can leave the house immediately rather than getting distracted and go to that coffee shop and write. Those kind of preparations can be absolutely wonderful to get your work going. Fantastic. Was there anyone else I missed in here I want to share? Great. Okay, so we started on 32 after. Do you mind if I go to 32 after? Yeah, we're doing it. I love it. Okay. So we could go on and on, but the last thing I'm gonna get us to do here, and this is a bit of an odd one, but basically rejection is a big part of doing work. And likely our first attempt at these things is not going to be successful. And so reframing rejection is really important, and deciding, what rejection you are happy with and what rejection you will make adjustments from. So what I want us to do here is write your ideal bad review of whatever you're about to create. So as an example, I once got a terrible review for a show in an Australian Fringe festival. It was 2 stars, which is basically like polite people slap in the face. Like, it's just like, no one's going to give you a 1-star review. So that's like as bad as you can get. But the way they described my show was exactly what I wanted from it. They were like, it's quintessentially optimistic. It's not gritty enough. It's not dark and like drains your soul. And I was like, I mean, that's kind of what I wanted. I want like a happy, upbeat, uplifting show where people left feeling good about it. And now I actually pull quotes from that and put it on my book. So I'm going to be printing that as like promotional material of what I wanted from it. So think about what bad review somebody could write of whatever goal you have, whatever you're trying to create. Write the best bad review that you could get of like, what could someone say about your work? If you're trying to be boundary pushing, somebody saying, man, they pushed this too far, it's too wacky, it's too out there, that's a good review. So try to think of what your best bad review could look like for you, and that way you'll be able to recognize it as positive feedback when it happens. So your best bad review. Just take maybe like a minute and a half here. You might have to finish this later, and that's okay. Ten seconds. As I say, you might finish this later, and that's totally fine. Okay, I'm just trying to skim through the comments that I missed here. Yeah, creating an ambiance that's pleasing to write in, absolutely. Write a short story a week. These are great steps. Attending conferences like this, that is a step for sure. I call a rejection an opportunity to grow as a writer. That's great, Leslie. Yeah, for sure. I was told that my story was too academic. Ouch, in one submission. Yeah. Yeah, you know what? But these are the kind of good rejections that you want sometimes. And then, okay, bad review that could actually help me. Mason's company projects are so unusual that it's difficult to categorize them by genre, and one has to think really carefully to figure them out. That's perfect, exactly. If that's what you want from it, that's the bad review you want. The Bradbury quote from Jed is like what Miranda just said, just keep trying, keep showing up. You can't be frustrated with your goals forever. You will eventually accomplish your goal, whatever that is. Boom. Yeah, summarized it. Love it. I don't even have to do a closing quote now. That's perfect. Does anybody else have a bad review they want to read?
I will.
Yes, please.
No talent, no plot, and she's literary, but she's not. These 2 worlds shouldn't be woven together, it's not even on one.
Oh my gosh, I love that. These 2 words shouldn't even be woven together. It's not even a genre. That is fantastic. And that's a great bad review. Like, that is getting to the crux of what you want it to be. And you're right, like, you're going to get just the empty stuff of no talent, not worth it. You're going to get that. And that's 0% constructive. So when you see bad reviews like that, you're just like, I'm just going to ignore that part because that's not even something I can work on. That's just somebody being mean. So it's good to like have that all pinpointed for sure. So I can't believe we're at the end of our time already, but hopefully this gave you guys some starting points. This is definitely something you can continue on your own time, but hopefully your first small step will help you get kick-started tonight. For those of you who do not know me, I'm Miranda Krogstad, and I have a book called Glass Half Full of Poetry coming out October 18th. This is even, you can tell it's the baby copy. It's got the not for resale on it. So this is brand new. So you can feel free to find me on my website or on social media. MirandaKrogstad.com or at Miranda K Poet on social media, because no one has time to spell Krogstad. I get it. So what's that? Yeah, oh, that's a great idea. I'll put at Miranda K Poet in there, and you can find my website and everything else. Miranda K Poet. Boom.
That's Insta.
That's Insta, that's Facebook as well.
Okay.
Yeah. So yes. Okay, thank you all so much for sharing your beautiful goals and ideas. I hope you guys keep working on them and accomplish beautiful things. Feel free to update me on your progress. I love hearing it. So thank you all so much. Have a great conference.
Okay, so we're gonna have lunch now. We have an hour and a half for lunch, and some people I think are getting pizza, so I think Finnian is coordinating that, so if you want in on the pizza, talk to Finn. Jenny and I are gonna go get coffee at Tim's, so we're gonna bring back a box of coffee, very classy, and put it on the table. So, or tea, and tea, I don't know, who wants tea? No? Okay, we're getting coffee. We can, yeah. Does anyone else want decaf coffee? No? Okay, we'll bring you a special decaf.
So on the pizza, it's probably, you don't have to know where the market's here.